For our Do Yourself a Favor segment for this episode, we have a great documentary. It's called The War on Kids. If you've been watching The Young Turks, you might have seen me review this with Cenk a few years ago. But it's a really great documentary about schools and how they're run, and particularly the negative effects that have happened to kids since zero-tolerance policies have been implemented when it comes to violence or violent imagery or what can be construed as weapons, which might be something like a butter knife or a piece of paper in the shape of a gun. The War on Kids also addresses the overmedication of kids, and also how our schools are more and more resembling prisons, with barbed wire, armed guards, security cameras everywhere, and what effects this has on the mental state of kids. You can watch my review of the film with Cenk in a link that is in the information section, as well as an interview that I did with the director of War on Kids, Cevin Soling. So anyway, why don't you check out a clip from The War on Kids.
Kids are burnt out on having their minds force-fed facts all the time and being told what they have to do and what they should be doing, and never having it asked of them, what are your opinions, what are your curiosities, what are your hopes, dreams, needs, wants.
You hear the word socialization used frequently. That's what schools do best. They socialize children. No, they don't. You learn to talk to a fragment of people your own age. You learn to envy, resent, and fear people older than you, and you learn to have contempt for people younger than you. They hardly exist.
This is what I hate most about school. Preps and jocks.
Preps aren't that bad.
Preps aren't as bad as the jocks, but
Yeah.
they're bad. They own the school. Teachers purposely give the jocks better grades so that they can keep playing their sport or whatever it is, so that they can keep the school spirited.
Our Movies That Matter segment this week comes by way of actually an interesting coincidence. So I was planning on talking about the War on Kids, which I just mentioned, and right around the same time, I got an unsolicited email from Cevin Soling, who's actually the director of the War on Kids and who I interviewed back in 2009 when the movie came out. I think he just had something on his mind, and so he just emailed me about it, and it sort of fits in what we're talking about today. Obviously it's about schools and education, not so much about charter versus public, but I think it is a very interesting idea about why bullying is happening at schools, which can also lead to kids not learning at schools. So anyway, here's some excerpts from the email that Cevin sent me. I am writing because I have been extremely frustrated at the attention bullying has been getting and how all of the discussion has been completely misguided. While I applaud the desire to deal with bullying, disturbingly, every article and television program fails to address the real catalyst. The fact is that all kids are bullied by their teachers and administrators. Because most people have accepted the autocratic structure of schools, they do not recognize this as bullying, but students are essentially powerless. By not having control over their lives and being repeatedly subjected to unjust treatment, where those in power create and enforce arbitrary rules, students need an outlet to feel like they have some degree of power themselves. Schools are the catalyst by which this kind of antisocial behavior emerges. The schools with the most abusive rules will invariably witness the worst bullying problems unless the level of control is so extreme that students have no will. This, in fact, is the model many advocate. In 1851, Dr. Samuel Cartwright proposed that a mental illness he called drapetomania was responsible for slaves not being deferential to their masters, the logic being that if slaves were not submissive, there must be something wrong with them. Naturally, the remedy called for these slaves to be beaten until they were cured. Like then, the great failure in today's discussion is the refusal to recognize the role the environment plays. It is natural and normal for members of an oppressed group to want to resist even if the object of that resistance isn't always conceived. Schools are not healthy environments for students since they are deprived of almost all civil rights. Outside of bullying classmates, the most prevalent form of resistance that takes place in school is the act of forgetting. This is done routinely once material is no longer subjected to a test. I mean, there's a lot of interesting stuff there, but I think that last point is very, very interesting. Something that I've been thinking a lot about recently and haven't quite nailed down my thoughts, but just this idea of unfairness and the effect that that has on kids, I mean, as well as adults. But if you feel that things are unfair, it changes the way you think about everything. So I want to thank Cevin Soling for sending me that email. Like I said, it was a great coincidence that it just happened to fit with the episode that we're doing today.